Hello, Tampa Bay fans. You're listening to The William Haynes Show, your online radio home for Tampa Bay sports talk and Rays post-game shows. Stay tuned throughout baseball season for live coverage after most Rays games with comprehensive coverage of all 162 games from April through October. Got something to say? We'd love to hear it. Give us a call, internationally toll-free. 877-566-1020 or send us a tweet at WHBC Official. Don't go anywhere. Tonight's program will be starting in just a couple of minutes.
HBC. The Rays come within one run in the ninth, but cannot complete the comeback. It is a good evening to you and how you be. William Haynes here, you there at 9:58 on this Tuesday night. This Rays post-game edition of the William Haynes Show is live from the WHBC studio in Clearwater, Florida. It was a 4-3 loss to the Washington Nationals to open up this two-game set in the nation's capital. Rich Hill getting the start. He gives up 3 runs in the first, another run in the second, but is able to weather the storm for a total start of 6 innings pitched on just 82 pitches. Definitely looked better at the end of the start. From Mark Tompkin on Twitter a couple minutes before we went live tonight, Rich Hill said in the postgame that he was tipping his pitches early and was able to correct the issue, so that would explain why he was able to put up 1, 2, 3 innings in the fourth, the fifth, and the sixth, thanks to a double play ball, and worked around a 2-out double in the third. So really after that second inning was really pretty good. I think that, and we'll talk about this later, I'm not going to get into all of it right now, but of course as the postgame show we have lots to discuss. Rich Hill's pitches have looked, I would say, a bit different since, the Major League Baseball basically decided to start forcing the ban on illegal substances for pitchers. At the beginning of the year, he was throwing, fastballs at 88, 89, and maybe a curveball at 71, 72, 73. Now it looks like he's throwing more of a slider pitch at about 66. Instead of that curveball, although he can occasionally drop it. And he's throwing a lot of changeups at low 80s and not as much as the high 80s fastball. I don't think Rich Hill, at 41 years old, none of this stuff was high spin rate. I'm not saying that he was using spider tag, but it seems like just about every pitcher and their mother was using at least some sort of combination like sunscreen and rosin, and with Glasnow, the injury, highlighting that. Of course, when you go cold turkey with anything, no matter what you're using, and you have to just use kind of your sweat to grip the baseball, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense because the baseball is very chalky just in its natural state. And maybe he doesn't have the feel for the curveball anymore, and so he's got to go to some other pitches, mainly like this new kind of slider it seems like he's developed, and also a changeup, which he didn't use at all until a start against Texas earlier this month. So he went all of April and all of May without throwing a changeup, and all of a sudden now he's using it. It seemed like he was using it a bunch in the first couple innings, or maybe it was just trying to get a feel for stuff. I don't know. I'm just throwing some stuff out there. But he goes 6 total innings, which they had off days on both sides of this 2-game series. So taxing the bullpen was not really much of a concern, but I still think no matter what time it comes at, if you're able to kind of gut out some extra innings late in your start, as Rich Hill did tonight, I still think that's a good sign, and I'm still pretty pleased with what we got out of him tonight. And we spent a lot of time yesterday talking about just the top of this lineup for the Washington Nationals is a bit of a murderer's row. Kyle Schwarber is the hottest hitter on earth, and he took the first pitch of the game, on the bottom of the first, 434 feet to right field into the upper deck. So you kind of live with that. And Trey Turner, Soto, and Zimmerman were given the Rays, fits the rest of the night as well. So, even in normal circumstances, this was not an incredibly easy lineup to face. And the Nationals as an entire team, not just those hitters, are very, very hot. I think at this point they've won, I want to say, 8 of their last 10 games, something like that. They are now over 500 for the first time since they were 1-0 to start the season at 39-38. So, of course, you'll recall 2019, they went 19-31 to start the season, and they end up atop of the world with the World Series championship. So this is a team, that can get hot midseason and not the best time to face this squad. And so I just think that's important to keep in mind to put this game in perspective. And the offense had chances time and time again throughout this game. Even in the first inning, they had first and second, which is 1 out, no runs there. They had, I think, runners at first and second with nobody out in the third. No runs there. They do score a run in the sixth, but they do leave another runner at second base. In the seventh, they had, I want to say, first and second with just 1 out again, no runs, and that was pretty much it. But they did have quite a bit of chances. They did empty the bench mostly with the pinch hitting, and something I did forget to mention, previewing this series, playing in a National League park for the first time since early April when they were in Miami. So obviously not utilizing the DH, and because of that, and sending Lewis Head back down to Durham and recalling Brasso, they had a total of the 5-man bench without the DH. So a lot of late game maneuverings, and I think Kevin Cash is pretty much always is able to kind of outmanage his opponent. Maybe not that Davey Martinez did anything wrong, but just the amount of preparation that coaching staff for the Rays does going into games. They were able to, I think, get the pitching the hitting pitching matchups that they were most confident with during the late stages, and able to kind of force Martinez's hand to get the Nat starter Joe Ross out of the game after just 6 1/3, where he had looked pretty electric, if anything, and the Rays just really struggling to square him up. I mean, he was just powering 95 past guys, mainly Zunino and Kiermaier, but there was also a lot of questionable calls, you would say, from the home plate umpire, Sam Holbrook. And anytime an umpire's name sounds familiar, that's usually not a good thing, because that's what those umpires are most famous for, is calls that they miss. And I think most of them definitely went against the Rays. The lineup only walks twice, but it seemed like they were getting in a lot of 3-ball counts, and the lineup very patient tonight, which I think is a good sign. But just the calls going against them, and that certainly went a long way in eliminating some of the threats that the offense had going. But even with that being said, they strike out 8 times, which, I mean, for this team, anytime it's under 10 is good, but that's still not a good number. If you really put it in perspective. They go 1 for 10 with runners in scoring position, which what else is new, but that's always something you point to as to why maybe the team struggles. Wendell, Meadows, and Franco all go 0 for 2. By the way, Wander Franco playing in his first road game as a big leaguer, and that might help to maybe get him back on track after what was a pretty underwhelming homestand following that first game in his debut. The last 5 games left a little bit to be desired, and he got a hit in his first as a left-handed hitter in the first inning as well, which was good to see. But after that, he did have a base hit basically taken away from him with, I think, runners at the corners in the third, and that was tough to see. It was an incredible play by Josh Harrison. Kind of like the play on, I think it was Saturday, Joey Wendell hitting a ball in the screws with the bases loaded and just an infielder makes a diving catch. Sometimes those plays happen, but for Franco, the box score definitely does not tell the story for him. He has been playing much better than the numbers would suggest. I think is making good, solid contact most at-bats. And I think is still working good at-bats, can take pitches confidently, all those things, which is good signs, especially for a guy, he's only, at this point, 7 games into his big league career. He's only 20 years old. And like I said, to have that kind of composure, I think is very impressive. And then had a couple of ground outs to end the game, which we had not seen a ton from him. Usually he was putting the ball in the air, including some with a decent amount of authority, but a couple of weak ground balls tonight. And it's just going to be a process for him, but I think the Rays continue to give him some votes of confidence. Another note before we go to break, we found this out during the game. Chaz Rowe is going to have season-ending shoulder surgery, so a guy that had, I think, pitched in April at the beginning of the season and had looked pretty good, goes down with the shoulder and has a couple of complications during the rehab process. He, I think, was in Durham ready to pitch in games, and then they shut him back down for a couple of days, and then they decided, all right, we need to kind of redo this, and then we found out that they're just going to need to operate and will end his season. So Chaz Rowe, a valuable asset for the team the last handful of years. I'm not sure he was at the top of anyone's list as far as, A guys that we're going to get back. I mean, Nick Anderson, and maybe even Oliver Drake, guys that you would hold in that regard. Chaz Rowe is certainly up there, but I don't think is a significant upgrade over, say, an Andrew Kittredge or a Jeffrey Springs right now. So any pitching loss, especially during this season, is not obviously ideal, but I'm sure the team will be able to weather the storm in his absence. But obviously, I want to make clear that is to no slight of Chaz Rowe. He's certainly a fan favorite with that nasty wipeout slider, and he will not be pitching in a Rays uniform in 2021, and that may be it for him as a Ray. I think he's still got ARB years left, or if he's going to hit free agency. So no Chaz Rowe for the rest of the season. And what we're going to do now is take a short break. When we return, dive deeper into tonight's 4-3 loss to the Washington Nationals, and then at the end of the program, preview tomorrow afternoon's contest to close out this series. And also want you to know during the break, you can call the show if you want to call in and share your thoughts on the team, 877-566-1020. You can also drop us a line on Twitter at WHBCOfficial to share your thoughts on there as well. So don't go anywhere. We'll be back in a couple of minutes with more Rays post-game coverage.
You're listening to the Rays postgame on the William Haynes Show. We're live most nights within 15 minutes of the final out to break down everything that happened in that day's game and take listener phone calls to get your thoughts. As always, you call the show at 877-566-1020 or tweet the show at WHBCOfficial. Like you to remember that archives of previous shows can be found on this show's page on Speaker.com and also on the WHBC YouTube channel. We look forward to having some of you on the show. Thanks for calling in.
HBC. And at 10:11, we return on the William Haynes Show, this Rays post-game edition of the show. Again, you can call us at 877-566-1020 to talk Rays, also at WHBC Official on Twitter. But without further ado, tonight's 4-3 loss drops the Tampa Bay Rays to now just 14 games over 500 at 47-33. They're now, I think, second in the majors, 24-17 on the road. This was game number 80, so tomorrow afternoon's contest will be marking the exact halfway point of the season, which is hard to believe that we're already to this point, and improves the Washington Nationals to 39-38, the first time they have been above 500 since early April when they were 1-0 to start the year. So that's never a good thing when you're the team that allows them to do that. But that is what it is, as you would say. For the victorious Nationals, it was 4 runs on 8 hits and an error defensively for them. That was on the catcher that allowed Rich Hill to advance to second base on what was ruled a bunt single, and the E2 getting him to second. It was incredible, a life-altering experience watching 41-year-old Rich Hill go run out of the box all the way to second base. It was really something to be seen. And then for the on the losing side, the Rays, 3 runs on 8 hits, no errors defensively for them. So the same amount of hits, and the Rays, of course, just finishing a run short. It seems like they have been on the losing end of far too many one-run games this season. It seems to be their calling card is winning in close games. But I think this year, almost every game is close. 33 losses, a good amount of those are going to come in one-run games, and that's just kind of the way the ball bounces sometimes. The pitcher decisions getting the win, it was Joe Ross. His 2 runs allowed over 6 1/3. He punched out 7 and only walked 2. Was working in and out of some jams, really, throughout the entire night. The only runs he allowed was a solo shot to Brandon Lau in the 5th with 2 outs and the bases empty, and then gave up a couple of doubles in the 6th that allowed a run to score, 1 to Meadows and 1 to Kiermaier. But outside of that, not a lot of hard contact, and was able to make the right pitches in the right situations, and really stifled this Rays offense, working against 6 1/3. Getting the loss for the Rays, it was Rich Hill. He is now 6-3 on the season. He allows 4 runs over 6 innings, strikes out only 2, but walks 1. Again, he said in the postgame in his presser that he was tipping his pitches early, and certainly there may be some weight to that, where he allowed 3 runs on 5 hits in the first, and another run off of a solo shot to Victor Robles, his first of the year, in the second inning. So it was 4-0 Nationals after 2, and the Rays were trailing the rest of the way, and obviously were not able to get back on top. And getting the save for the Nationals, already his 18th of the season, Brad Hand. He gives up a run in the 9th, but with a 2-run lead, still enough to get the job done. It was to lead off the inning, a solo home run for Mike Zunino, his 17th of the season. And it's funny that the team lead in home runs keeps going back and forth, now between 3 guys, Meadows, Zunino, and Lau. And now after tonight, Zunino sits atop the leaderboard with 17 long balls. And then after that was able to retire the pinch hitter Margot, Randy Arozarena, and Yandy Diaz, who had not a bad night as a pinch hitter. I was going to say had another rough night, but he was not in the starting lineup. He came in the 7th again as a pinch hitter. So, and then another note for Brad Hand. Just last night against the Mets in their win, it was just a 1-game kind of series to make up those games that got canceled in early April because of COVID. He pitched an inning and 2/3, a 5-out save for Brad Hand. The very next night, pitches a 9th inning. So I guess not overworked if he continues to show well, but a guy that they put quite a bit of money into acquiring him over from Cleveland this past offseason, and one of the reasons why we were high on the Nationals going into the season as a potential contender for October baseball, and they're well balanced. The starting rotation maybe not as good as it once was, but an underrated bullpen, I would say, for sure, and a couple of other guys giving them fits. Sam Clay and Austin Voth, I believe Voth, I think it is Voth. And obviously a really good lineup right now, headlined by the hottest player in the world and Kyle Schwarber. And then another note as we lead, kind of the post-game coverage off with this. In just 2 hours and 34 minutes and in front of a pit attendance of 17,117. So it was a pretty quick game. I guess they put us out of our misery pretty early because it did look like that game could have gotten away from us in a hurry, and it could have gotten ugly. Maybe Rich Hill only goes 2, giving up the 4 runs, and they have to piece together the bullpen the rest of the way in what could have been a blowout, etc. Instead, it was close pretty much the whole night. The pitching after the second inning was really, really good. Didn't allow any runs, of course, and not too many hits either, as there was a lot of 1, 2, 3 innings put up in the scorebook as well. It was thanks to some pretty decent relief appearances from Kittredge and Springs after the off day where they worked quite a bit in that weekend series against the Angels, but they fall a run short. And right now, the Boston Red Sox are leading 7-6 in the top of the 8th inning in Fenway. So if they hold on, they will increase their lead in the division by another half game. That would extend them out to 1.5 games. Actually, that would extend the division lead to 2 games. Right now, Tampa Bay a game and a half back of first, and Boston with a win tonight would have a 2-game lead in the American League East, which would not be a great thing, but as I spent some time saying last night, I think we've got to just put that out of our minds for now. Boston, I mean, they're off to an incredible start as well, but I think if you had to pick a team to put your stock into in the second half, it would be a much smarter pick investing in Tampa Bay than it would to be in Boston. I think the Red Sox would be one of the greatest contenders to have kind of a letdown in the second half, whereas the Rays, really the past 3 seasons, have been absolutely stellar and one of the best teams in the majors in the second half. So if they can do even better than they have in the first half this year, I think, watch out. This is a team that's going to win upwards of maybe that they get to triple digit 100 wins because 80 games in, they're at 47, so kind of right around that pace. We're just obviously going to have to wait and see. For Kevin Cash managing, I was remiss in not mentioning after Friday's win against the Angels at the Trop, that notched in his belt his 500th managerial win, which was kind of funny because Joe Madden was there, who of course leads any Rays managers with wins. He's got, I think, 753 over. I think he was there from 2005 to 2014, somewhere around there. Probably when Cash is done, if he stays with the team, he'll beat out Madden for that. And may only have to stay there, another 2 or 3 seasons if the team continues on the run that they're on. But in all seriousness, congratulations to Kevin Cash, and he's got a great cast around him with the front office and the teams put on the field. But I think Cash, as much as we like to joke about him sometimes, you got to give him a lot of credit in his managerial decisions, even in just small moments in a random game in June or July. It seems like pretty much no matter who they're facing, they have an advantage in the manager's office, and it seems like Kevin Cash is kind of working around some of these guys with the various teams that they play. So an understated advantage to have in a game, and Kevin Cash has been terrific for the Rays. So again, congratulations on win number 500, and I think right now he is at 501 and a 2-game losing streak going for the Rays right now as well. But the lineup that he put on the field tonight, again with no DH, so Rich Hill, the pitcher. So we'll start with defense first. In the outfield, from left to right, it was Meadows in left, Kiermaier in center, Phillips in right with the all-lefty outfield. And then in the infield, from third to first, Wendell at third, Franco at shortstop. It was Brandelau at second, G-Man Choi at first. Mike Zunino did the catching with Rich Hill, the pitcher, no DH again. And the way that the batting order was structured, it was Lau, Choi, Franco, Meadows, Wendell, Kiermaier, and the bottom 3, Zunino, Phillips, and Hill. When I previewed the lineup, I put a DH in there, but outside of that, we were pretty much right on. But a traditional lineup against a right-handed pitcher, and everything falls into line. A bit surprised with Arozarena getting the night off, but in a National League park, you're gonna you're gonna use a lot of pinch hitters basically. So just about everyone gets in the lineup. I think the only man left on the bench tonight was the catcher Francisco Mejia. He was the only guy that did not appear in the game after the off the bench. All the guys that did, Yandy Diaz, Mike Brasso, Manuel Margot, and Randy Arozarena all picked up a bat and made an appearance, excuse me, in tonight's game. So I guess we'll go one by one because we already kind of talked about the scoring situations, and then maybe go in depth in that a little bit, and then talk about the pitching and put a wrap on this game. So Brandon Lau in the leadoff spot, and a lot of these guys maybe only get 2 or 3 at-bats, and then they get pinch hit for later in the game, and we'll include the spot that they get pinch hit for, we'll include that with them. So Brandon Lau in the leadoff spot against a righty. He goes 1 for 2 on the game with a run knocked in and also a walk added as well. Started off the game with a fly out to center, walked in the third, and then hit a solo home run with 2 outs and the bases empty, much like he did on Sunday against the Angels to put the Rays on the board and made it a 4-1 game at that time. After that, in the 7th, with the Nats going to the bullpen and they go to the lefty Sam Clay with a man on and 1 out, the Rays counter with Yandy Diaz, who singles, pulling the baseball, and that's something we talked about. I think the Angels, I was just trying to remember the situation. I think they shifted him to pull, and then we're pitching him inside, basically. So Yandy Diaz, a hitter that likes to go the other way, if you exclusively kind of pitch him inside, it's going to be hard for him to do that. So I was wondering if maybe that's how teams were going to attack him moving forward, because it seemed like it worked really well for the Halos over the weekend, but was able to pull the baseball in the 7th and make it first and second with 1 out in the 7th inning, where the Rays sorely needed some offense, and a clutch pinch hit for Yandy Diaz there. Goes 1 for 2 in the night, but I think is in a bit of a funk, just working at bats, more swing and miss than we see in his game. Looks a little bit off balance. A guy that seems to be pretty much in control every time he comes to the plate, and it is kind of making the pitcher come to him. A 371 on base percentage is still stellar, but it's fallen basically 30 points to where it was. He was around 400 there for a while. So again, still good numbers, but is not quite at the level that he was. And he may be the odd man out right now as far as who gets playing time, with Choi and Wendell at the corners. Those are the 2 positions that Yandy plays, and it seems like those names I just mentioned are firmly planted in their spots. And with Franco continuing to get everyday playing time, there is going to be an odd man out. And who knows when Walls comes back what's going to happen. So getting back into this, what has continued to be, I guess, a good problem to have with the logjam in the infield. But we always talk about who's the odd man out, and the Rays typically liking to ride the hot hand. Yandy Diaz right now, unless he maybe picks it back up a little bit, who knows. But again, a 1 for 2 off the bench is still a good performance, and give him credit for that. He came in to play first base after that, and I don't think there's too many incredible plays coming to him. Brandon Lau, again, the home run was his 16th of the season, which at the time tied him for the team lead. It was off of the starter Joe Ross, off of a righty, which of course is no surprise. And it was no cheapie either. 400 feet to dead center on a 1-1 count. Just got a fastball middle in, and really, really punished it. And that's his pitch to hit. And that's how you can tell he's going well, when he really damages that pitch. Thinking back to kind of 2019, early 2020 is kind of reminiscent of one of those plays. And would love to see him continue the run that he's been on. And for Brandon Lau, he's got 7 home runs in his last 21 games played. So a long ball about every 3 days, or 3 games. That is pretty good, very good, I would say. In fact, maybe not in comparison to a guy like Schwarber, who's hitting 1 or 2 basically every day. But for as our friend Seth likes to say, for mere mortals, not a bad stat line for Brandon Lau. In the 2 spot, it was G-Man Choi. Today, Choi goes 1 for 3, no walks, no strikeouts. An interesting stat put up by Bally Sports during his at-bat in the first inning. They said he is hitting over 460. He's hitting over 460 when he swings at the first pitch, and that's no surprise to anyone who's watched the team consistently this year, especially when he came off the injured list the first time in mid-May. I recall that series against the Mets at home where he was really doing some damage, and then they go on the road. That was during that, I think 11-game win streak when the team was red hot and catapulted them into a great run that they've been on in the first half of the season. And he also had a 5-for-9 weekend against the Angels, so a guy that had been struggling to find his footing after coming off the second IL stint, that one with the left groin connected to the right knee. So a guy that's certainly banged up and probably is not feeling his best physically, but I think right now is basically picked up things where he left off when he went on the IL again with that groin. So good to see Choi finding some more consistency and a real valuable asset at the top of the order. A guy that can work really good at bats and really make the pitcher work, or he'll just dump the first pitch into right field, or even to go the opposite way into left for just a bloop single. And anytime you're getting a lot of base runners, obviously more runs are going to come across to score, and I don't need to tell you that. He's got an on-base right now, albeit a much smaller sample size than Yandy Diaz right now, a 385 OBP, and no slouch on the batting average either, 273. Again, Choi, it's a good sign for really the whole team if he's going to be back in a groove. Hit a one-out single in the first when they put up their first threat of the game, obviously. Flew out to left with a couple of men on, so a squandered opportunity with runner in scoring position there. And then in the seventh, after that Brandon Lau pinch hit for, or Diaz rather pitch hitting for Lau, it was Mike Brasso pinch hitting for Choi. Same situation against the lefty Clay. It makes sense. The Rays put all the lefties at the top of the order to start the game against the righty Ross. The Nats counter with the lefty reliever against the top of the order, and the Rays, re-counter with their righty bats off the bench. And after Yandy Diaz singling, it was Mike Brasso, and in his one at-bat of the night, he basically ran out a double play ball. And with the way the Nats defense was playing tonight, I guess it was fortunate that Washington was not able to turn two. It was Yandy Diaz out at second, and Phillips moves to third, so runners at the corners. Was a 2-1 count, and took a sinker kind of down and away and just put it on the ground. But with the way Sam Holbrook was calling the balls and strikes, he would have put his hand up for strike two. So I think Brasso may be pushing the issue a little bit. Again, for Brasso, this was his first game back up again from Durham, as he's going to get quite familiar with the Durham shuttle, kind of like Lewis Head, who coincidentally Lewis Head is sent down and Brasso recalled in his place. Taylor Walls, the shortstop, is with the team right now, and it looks like he's going to be brought or activated any day now when he's eligible in a couple days. And the logical move is that they're going to send down Brasso in order to bring Walls back up. So even if he does well for himself, I'm not sure he's looking at an extended stay unless someone maybe goes down, but that's never something you can predict. But I think just to stay in the Rays' good graces, it would do him some good to continue to work good at bats. And just one pinch hit appearance tonight in the seventh, and would have been the next man to come up to the plate had Yandy Diaz been able to reach in the ninth. So we were just inches away, I guess, from seeing another Brasso at bat, but it was not meant to be tonight. Batting in the third spot in the lineup, it was Wander Franco. His 1-for-4, I guess, brings him up to 154 in what has been a pretty rough, I guess, week's worth of games, as this was game number 7, and what will hopefully be an illustrious big league career for Franco. Singled in the first inning to make it first and second with 1 out, and as I mentioned, in his first road game as a big leaguer, he gets his first major league hit as a left-handed hitter off of the righty Ross, which was good to get that monkey off of his back, because obviously throughout your career you're going to be seeing a lot more righties than lefties. That's just how things go, and so he's going to spend the majority of his career, probably 2/3 of his career at-bats in the left-handed batter's box. So to get some consistency there, I think would go a long way. And got off to a good start. To my recollection, it was just kind of a blue pit that he shot the other way. But looking at it here, on the first pitch that he saw, it was just a slider kind of down and away, and he was able to hit it into left. So to go the other way with a slider down and away, that's a good sign. Hitting the ball where it's pitched. Maybe a couple of players in this lineup, like maybe say a Kiermaier, could benefit from that kind of mindset, and that's when the offense is really able to move, when they can hit the ball where it's pitched. And I think throughout his first, we're down to 25 or so at-bats, Franco has done a pretty good job of doing that. And another example of hitting and making contact off of the first pitch of the at-bat, a guy that, again, very small sample size, but likes to really take pitches, kind of like a Yandy Diaz, but more aggressive, just in the comparison. He takes most pitches outside of the zone. He's done a really good job of that, and he swings at, I think, 70% of pitches in the zone, which is above Major League average. So got into a little bit of a slump, I think that 0 for 16, where he would go down 0-2, basically just taking a couple pitches in the zone. And so I think maybe coming out of that mindset a little bit, if you can get a pitch that you think you can hit, go ahead and swing at it. A G-Man Choi is a perfect example of that. A guy that can work a good at-bat at times, but is not reluctant to swing at that first pitch and put it in play. So I think that would be a good sign for Franco here moving forward. In the third inning, was a victim of kind of some bad luck, and as a member of the Rays, just the way things go, he's going to have to get used to that. With first and second and one out, he grounded to a fielder's choice. It was basically just Josh Harrison robbing him of a hit, making an incredible diving play in the infield, or I think it might have even been in the outfield grass because it was pretty well struck. Was able to work the count full. Was, again, just taking close pitches borderline, and with the way Sam Holbrook was calling the game back there behind the catcher, probably the only guy that was able to really kind of secure those calls, which is funny for a 20-year-old kind of making his emergence into the bigs, and fouled off a couple of sinkers in the zone, 94, 96. He was struggling against velocity against, that Boston Red Sox pitcher, not Garrett Richards, but the Nick Pivetta, when he had that no-hitter. He was getting overpowered by 96, 97, so just kind of swinging through it. So maybe getting a step closer, fouling it off, I don't know. And then on a full count, slider down and away from the righty Ross again, and pulls this one instead of, hitting it the other way, but was good enough to be a base hit, and the Nats taking a hit off the board there with runners at first and second. So that would have gone a long way in a 4-0 game, but as we said before, it seemed as if it was not meant to be. And then a couple of, from what I recall, pretty weak ground balls, one to start the 6th, and one for the third and final out of the 7th, with a couple of men on base. I'm not going to do this for every guy, but Franco, I think, is important to really do our due diligence and deep dives. In the 6th, faced Ross for a third time, slider down and away first pitch. So funny that Ross wanted to keep going to that pitch, in the first pitch of the at-bat, and just like in the first inning, Franco put it in play, and instead it was a ground out to third base. But with the way the Nats were shifting, I have no real way of knowing where that was. They say it was actually, I don't know if that's right, if it was down the first base line. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So as a lefty there, put it on the ground. I was hoping I could come away with something more there, but in the 7th, in a situation that was a bit more high leverage, if you can say that, with runners at the corners and 2 outs in a 4-2 game, so the tying run on base, you got to come through there. This time facing the lefty Sam Clay, so he goes back to where it seems like he's been better, and the right-handed batter's box, and gets all sinkers in the at-bat, takes one for ball 1, then takes one in the strike zone, 1-1, gets the pitch down and away on a 1-1 count, and grounds out to second with it. So a guy that's been hitting kind of sliders up in the zone, hitting them into the air with some authority, and it makes sense. You pitch him down and away. Those are mainly going to be ground balls. And so all 4 of his at-bats were that way, pitches low in the zone, again, that way he was putting on the ground. So, but comes away with a hit, his first as a lefty. So Franco continuing to check off the boxes. And ultimately, I think not a bad night, and he has continued to really wow at shortstop. I was not expecting him to maybe live up to expectations. I think obviously it's going to be harder for him to live up to the offensive expectations, but he was really highly touted as a defender as well. And a guy that Doug Wechter said over the weekend is built like a middle linebacker than he is a shortstop. Not your typical shortstop build. But is really quite nimble for a guy that is so big and muscular. He's kind of like a more athletic Yandy Diaz, if there is such a thing. And I think there is going to be a lot of comps to those two guys, and I think it's funny right now that they're on the same team because there's more similarities than we may realize right now. Wander just much younger and hitting from both sides of the plate, but I think they may end up having fairly similar careers, but I hope for Wander and the Rays' sake that maybe the numbers are a bit better with the hitting. But if the batting eye is anything close, I mean, if Wander ends up being a 400 OBP guy, I mean, that's like up there with Mike Trout and, Acuna and some of the game's biggest names. Maybe not Acuna. I was looking for another name, Harper. Bryce Harper of Philly is a guy that works a lot of walks, kind of like Trout does. So, and we talked about that when he got called up, that's kind of his ceiling and what a lot of scouts are projecting him to be. And the 4 spot was Austin Meadows. He goes 1 for 4 with his 20th double of the season, which leads the team. Was putting the ball in the air an awful lot. Did it in the first with first and second and 1 out and 1 to start the 8th. That's what he does. We talk about all the time. I'm not sure there is a whole lot more of analyzing that needs to go on with the Austin Meadows fly balls other than just stating the fact. Also struck out looking with a couple of men on in the 3rd. I want to take a look at that at bat, and I can recall that was a victim of some Sam Holbrook unfortunateness. I was lost for words there. It was good morning, good afternoon, and good night. Just all fastballs with runners at the corners and 2 outs. Took one up and away for strike 1. Should have been probably a ball. Then fouled one off right down the middle for strike 2. And then takes one up and away again. And that one was closer to being a strike, but again there on the corner. So victim of some Sam Holbrook. Again, I don't know what you want to call it, but not the right call. That's all I'll say. That double that he came away with in the 6th, that started kind of the run where they put up one of the 3 on the night, and or actually they already had a run going into that inning because of the Lau home run, and put up rather the 2nd of the 3 runs. Was on a 1-0 count against the righty Joe Ross, and sinkers again. So he went all fastballs to Meadows in a couple of bats that they had against each other, really in the 3, and just one middle away, and a pitch that he swings and misses out a lot when things are going bad, but when things are going well, is able to hit singles off of him, and reminiscent of that, 291 season that he had in 19, where he was putting all those fastballs, in play for hits, and I was able to get one in the gap in left center, so was able to take a pitch away, and again, hitting the ball where it's pitched, going the other way with it. So for Meadows, a guy that I think I'm always ragging on and probably too critical of, is actually really having himself a really good season in 2021, and I don't think he's going to make it, but was in consideration for an all-star bid with the power numbers that he has this year. Right now, he's hitting .239 with a .328 on base and a .484 slugging. So the quick back of the napkin math, that is a slugging of about 800, which is, as far as I know, well above average for a major league hitter. In the 5 spot, Joey Wendell goes 0 for 4 with a strikeout. It's been a rough few days for him, an average all the way down to 276, and just kind of routine plays over there at third base. Speaking of power numbers, he's only got a slugging about 30 points lower than Meadows at .457, and the batting average is about 30 or 40 points higher. But Wendell is in a bit of a slump right now, and is doing all kinds of things, putting the ball in the air, putting it on the ground, and nothing seems to be working for him right now. And you're just going to be dealing with those kind of lumps over the course of a full season. Kiermaier in the 6th spot in center field, and he made some running catches. A lot of the outfielders did. It seemed like while there was 6 total extra base hits, 3 home runs, 3 doubles, there was a lot more that were close. And I don't know if it was just me, but Nationals Park seems gigantic. Maybe it was just the way the broadcast was presented. But it seemed like the outfield was like 600 feet from home plate. It just plays like a gigantic stadium. And so there was a lot of, if it was maybe in Yankee Stadium, there would have been a lot more home runs. But the park was able to hold a lot of deep fly balls. And because of that, there was some plays that had to be made by the likes of Kiermaier and also Phillips tonight. So give them credit for their continued defensive prowess. And Meadows as well made a couple of nifty plays, to say the least. But about Kiermaier, he goes 1 for 4 with a strikeout and a double, his 9th of the season. It also drove in a run in the 6th to cut the lead to 4-2. Taking a look at that at bat now, as that was really his highlight of the night, obviously. On a 1-2 count against the starter Ross, so righty on lefty, and he gets a slider down and away that he hits up the middle, a double to center. So kind of the same situation as it was to Meadows, just basically 2 batters before. And I don't know that I need to waste breath saying this again, but I might as well. Kiermaier is always better off when he's hitting the ball where it's pitched and is just trying to kind of hack and slash. He tries to get lift on the ball, whatever. He was swinging through a lot more fastballs than he should have tonight. I know that's easy for me to say, kind of the armchair quarterback, but the only reason I say it is because I know he has the potential to be so much better, because I can see how he can crush pretty good pitching. A guy that's taken Garrett Cole deep pretty consistently. He has been good against some of the game's best over the years, and the only thing that he's lacked in his career has just been consistency, game to game. But when he gets hot, he is pretty hot, and has always been a great defender out over there in center. But does notch a double, and it does drive in a run as well. So a guy that's, to my eyes, had a pretty bad stretch. But looking at his games against the Angels, had a 0-for-4 on Sunday, got the off day on Saturday, it looks like, and then on Friday went 3-for-4. So it's not on a terrible stretch. And if he can put the ball in play like he did in that double in the 6th, he'll be better off. And the reason I didn't say the rest of the at-bats, because the rest of them weren't very good. It seems like right now he's striking out, swinging a lot, and then grounding out a lot into the shift. And he's been doing that way, way too much. And that's a sign of a guy not hitting the ball where it's pitched, and always just trying to pull the baseball. A lot of groundouts to first. He had a comebacker to the mound and also one to second base here tonight. And no real big situations. The only one that he came up with men on base, he hit a double, so I'll give him credit for that. And again, was good defensively in center field. Batting 7th in the lineup tonight was Mike Zunino. Started off the night really rough, 0-for-3 with 3 strikeouts, and then hit a home run to start the 9th. To cut the Nats' lead to just 1 run. Again, kind of like his home run on, Saturday against the Angels. Hit it really high up in the air. The one against the Halos was, a 45-degree launch angle. This one was probably close to the same. Goes 358 to left on a 1-1 count. Just gets a fastball middle in and pulls it. Kind of like he's got that kind of golf swing. And I know for young ball players, they say that's what you're not supposed to do. But for a guy that's as strong as Michael Zunino is, he's able to hit those balls out of the yard, and he did so in the 9th inning to prevent what would have been maybe a golden sombrero with the way things were going, and was another guy that was just kind of getting overpowered by fastballs. And Zunino has been on quite on a run. He's got his average over the Mendoza line at 207, higher than Lau's 205 right now. So Zunino, because every team in the majors has to have at least one all-star. With Glasnow going down, and he would have been the obvious pick, I think Mike Zunino, if the Rays only get one, it's got to be Zunino, right? The fact that he's such a great defensive catcher, and I don't as much care about the metrics for him, just the eye test. And I know that'll get you in trouble these days saying things like that, but to my eyes, he's a terrific asset defensively and is having probably the best hitting season maybe of his career by the time things are all said and done. I think he hit, 20 home runs in 2017, and he hit his 17th home run of the night here in the ninth. So, we're basically halfway through the year. He's on pace. I don't think he's going to get it, but he's on pace for almost 40 home runs. If he does that, I mean, that's a terrific year for Zunino for sure, and I think the Rays will have him under contract for at least one more year, and they probably won't be able to afford to keep him after that. But great to see him having this kind of success offensively after all he's done for the Rays behind the plate the last couple seasons since coming over from the Seattle Mariners. Hitting in the 8th spot was Brett Phillips, and he got a couple of at-bats before getting pinch hit for. Was 0 for 2 with a walk. Has got his average right at 200, but is working a fair amount of walks at 316. One of the more interesting at-bats that you'll see is one worked by Brett Phillips. He had his one walk in the 7th to lead off the inning. He went from 0-2 to work in the walk, to have the cojones to take those pitches on the edges with a home plate ump in Sam Holbrook that wanted to ring up every guy that came to the plate wearing a navy blue jersey. To take that, not just with 2 strikes, but to start off in an 0-2 and work that at bat, really impressive. And maybe I was underselling him as a guy that was kind of a free swinging at the plate and a lot of wild-looking strikeouts, and he does always have that in his game. And he did strike out once here tonight in 3 plate appearances, flew out to left the other time. Got a pinch hit for in the 9th, which makes sense against the lefty Brad Hand. They want to get the righty Margot in the game, and that was certainly the right move. And Margot took him out to the warning track and a fly out to center field. So Margot coming off the bench again in the 9th. That's never an easy thing to do, but was close to maybe even tying the game. If the Rays had gone back-to-back in the 9th, I think people would have been going nuts. That would have been really, really cool to see. They almost did it. For Margot, it was a sinker down and in, and flew out basically to center. So he hit that baseball the other way, down and in. So that's quite a powerful hack for Margot to be able to do that, because usually oppo home runs are pitches pitched away, not down and in, unless I'm reading that wrong. But to me, that's what it looks like. And Margot, a guy that can hit pitches anywhere, and I guess can put them anywhere he wants to. That's really impressive from Margot, and he's been valuable certainly for the Rays. I don't need to say that with the 244 average so far this year. He's one of the best in the American League with 2 outs. He's a terrific 2-strike hitter as well. He's probably the best that the Rays have with runners in scoring position as well. So just came up a couple of biscuits short, as Dave Wills likes to say. If he had just had that extra biscuit for breakfast, could have been a tie game, but a good at-bat worked. The first pitch that he saw, again, that takes cojones too, coming off the bench to swing at the first pitch as well. And then in the 9th spot, it was Rich Hill to start the game, and he got not just 1, but 2 at-bats, singled off of a bunt in the 3rd. This probably one of the slowest, guys really legging it out that I've ever seen, which makes sense at 41 years old. And I don't want to rag on the guy. I say it with loving intentions, but the guy looks 41 years old running the bases. I mean, really looked unathletic getting up the line. But thanks to a bad throw by the catcher Yan Gomes, a good throw probably would have got him at first, but they do call it a hit anyway. Instead, it gets away, and Hill has to leg it all the way to second. And it was funny to see how out of breath he was after that whole sequence was over, and got all the way to third base on a fielder's choice. So he got his money's worth tonight, hitting at the plate. I know he had a game on the 4th of July a couple years ago, where it was kind of the same thing, kind of ran out a ground ball, then got to second on a wild pitch, got to third on a wild pitch, and then I think came in from third on a sac fly, something like that. So Rich Hill, no stranger to the life of an offensive player, and he takes pride in it, spending most of his career, I think, in the National League, at least some of his best years in LA with the Dodgers. There was some interesting pieces from Tompkin, the Rays beat reporter, about the kind of routine that he has, batting practice, whatever. I mean, he really takes this seriously. And he was upset with himself after a comebacker to the mound in the fifth to retire him, to put him at 1 for 2 in the night. And after that ground out, where he had seen 5 pitches against the starter Ross, which just that alone is doing the job, and he was slamming the batting gloves, throwing the batting helmet in the dugout, really upset with himself. I'm wondering if maybe running through his mind that might be the last at-bat he gets in his big league career, because I don't know if he's got maybe another year or 2 in him. I would say probably not, but just because he's 41. But who knows if Tom Brady is any model, he could go for another 4 or 5 years. I think the Rays will be in Atlanta after the All-Star break, and just quickly in the second half, they're going to be in National League Park. Outside of that, they'll be in Philadelphia for a 2-game set in late August. And outside of that, that's it. So they've got 5 games left after tomorrow in National League Park. So very well could have been his last at-bat as a big leaguer. We don't know. That was just my thought, seeing him so frustrated. It wasn't like he struck out on 3 pitches or anything. And, I mean, was catching up to like 95. It was pretty impressive to see him swing the bat at the plate. And then after those 2 at-bats, he got pinch hit for in the 7th, because, yes, he did go 6. And Randy Arozarena hits for or faces Joe Ross, the last batter to face him. And Arozarena strikes out against him in the first at-bat. That one in the 7th for Randy. I just wanted to see what the pitches was that he was facing. Started off 0-2, took a slider, and then swung through one down 0-2. Took a couple pitches 2-2, and then chased a slider down and away, and a really good slider for Joe Ross. As I said, he was kind of fooling hitters all night. And when you can get the fastball for strikes and twirl some pretty good off-speed stuff, I mean, he really was frustrating guys all night long. And then lined out to the second baseman. It was just a weak contact in the 9th inning. Kind of the same sequence. Took a slider for a strike, swung through a slider for a strike. So kind of the exact same thing done again, but by a different pitcher. And then, again, the third pitch of the at-bat, a slider down and away. And instead of striking out on it, is able to put it in play, but it was just soft contact to Josh Harrison for out number 2. And then just probably, a couple minutes later, the line out for Yandy Diaz ended the game to finalize the 4-3 loss. Outside of that, it doesn't look like, I mean, we covered all the situations pretty in depth. They struck out 8 times, walked only 2. They saw 122 total pitches, 80 for strikes, so pretty good for that as far as the Nats goes. The starter Ross threw 88 pitches, 57 for strikes, which is an okay ratio. It's not fantastic, but it's all right. And so the Rays may be squandering some opportunities, certainly, not just with the 1 for 10 with runners in scoring position, but just from at-bat to at-bat. Not able to work out advantageous counts as much as they could, but the umpiring, I think, again, went a decent way with that as well. And that's it. We covered all the extra base hits for the guys this year, and they only scored 3 runs, but hit 4 extra base hits, 2 doubles, 2 homers. That's rare for this team. Usually when they're doing that, they're scoring like 7 or 8. So that just goes to show you all the other opportunities they were not able to capitalize on. And again, just one more time, they had good solid opportunities in the first, in the third, in the 6th, 7th innings, and were only able to come away with just a run in those innings that I mentioned. So had they come through maybe a little bit more, they're able to turn it to the bullpen, and we're talking about a different result. But needless to say, that was not the case. On the pitching side, for Rich Hill, he gets the loss, but a good really finish for him. 6 innings of work, gave up 4 runs on 8 hits, a walk, 2 strikeouts, gave up 3 home runs on the night, 82 pitches, 56 for strikes, faced 7 total batters in the first inning and was only able to retire basically 2 of them with 1 out on the base path. That was that crazy 7-6 to 1-5 relay that was going on. That was pretty fun to watch, and the Rays have had kind of some wacky plays lately in that kind of manner. But gave up 3 runs in the first on 5 hits. On the very first pitch that he threw, gave up a home run to Kyle Schwarber and 434 feet to right. They call it a 4-seam, but at the velo at 83, that's kind of a change up for Hill, and that's what I take it to be. And Schwarber just punished it. Gave up a double to Turner right after that. That one and a pretty deep at bat on the 5th pitch, just a curveball at 68. Double off of that, and then Soto right after on a 1-0 count. They called it a sinker at 82. So again, I don't know if it's a fastball, if it's a changeup, but just middle at 82. And a guy with Alexis Soto is going to damage that pitch, and he did, going almost 400 feet to right field to make it 3-0. And the first 3 men that come to the plate all getting extra base hits, 2 of them homers. That's not a good sign. And that after that, if you were to say that he went 6 innings, I probably would not have believed you, but he was able to kind of weather the storm. Retires the next 2 men, gives up a single to Harrison, then gives up a double to Castro, and Harrison just getting caught between third and home, and an interesting decision by Hill to kind of cut off the throw from the cutoff man Franco instead of letting it roll to Zunino. He just decided to get it himself and kind of got him in a pickle over there at third base, and they're able to get him out and end the inning. So again, 5 hits, only gives up 3 runs. And then the only other run against him, it was a leadoff home run by Robles to start the second, and the first home run of the season for him. And he's played a bunch of games this year. It was a fastball at 87 to the righty up and in. And for him, typically he does not give up a ton of damage or allow a ton of damage off that pitch, but he did that time 400 feet to left field. And but again, that was it. Walked the very next man. Walked the pitcher, by the way. And so that was another big reason for concern right after the home run. But is able to get a double play ball from Schwarber and fly out from Turner to end the inning. And then after that, he was free cruising. Worked around a 2-out double in the 3rd, 1-2-3 in the 4th, again in the 5th. And thanks to a double play ball, faced the minimum in the 6th. So really, the last 3 innings for him faced the minimum, 9 up and basically 9 down. So that he was able to kind of get around stuff, and it seemed like he found a better feel for his pitches. He said he was tipping his pitches, which I'm not sure that the Nats were capitalizing off of it, because just because he was doesn't mean that they noticed, although these days you would be inclined to believe that they're probably looking for that kind of stuff. But either way, just another thing that I want to throw out there, I think seeing the stuff about tipping pitches kind of deflated that, took some air out of that balloon, but just something that I was pondering during the game. So Garrett Richards, a starter for the Red Sox, he started a couple days ago for the Red Sox, and if you'll recall, he couldn't get out of the second against the Rays in that 8-2 win, and a guy that's really been struggling after the ban on the sticky stuff, maybe one of the most notable outside of, maybe a Garrett Cole, as far as just how bad he's been compared to how good he was prior to the ban. And he was saying after the game, talking to Garrett Richards, that he was throwing, I think it was something like a circle change or something, a pitch that he said he had never thrown in his life, and that he learned like 3 or 4 days before the game, because his other pitches that he had been accustomed to throwing his whole life, I guess, or most of his professional career, more like, he couldn't do it without the assistance of the sticky stuff. And there was a video from I want to see if I can just pull it up real quick just to give them credit for it. It was on the Braves pregame show about a week ago, and a lot of people were saying, definitely watch this, it makes sense. And I'll definitely retweet it at WHBC Official, and if you'll just go on there, and I'll retweet it. But it was from Peter Moylan, who was a pitcher for a while in the big leagues, and he did about a 4-minute, kind of explanation talking about the sticky stuff and how it affects pitchers. And Moylan was saying that The spider attack, yes, the abuse and getting up the spin rate. But as Seth came on the show a couple weeks ago and went into in-depth on, it's not just that. A lot of guys just use something simple like sunscreen and rosin like Glasnow, who doesn't need an extra boost. The guy naturally throws 100 miles an hour, but I've attested to this. If you've been able to, if you've caught a ball at a game or whatever, you've thrown around a real Major League Baseball, it's shiny. It's very slippery, chalky. And then what they do, the only thing Major League Baseball does, is they rub it up with that Delaware River mud. And it's inconsistent in how it's done. Sometimes it works, but if they leave them and it dries, it's just more chalky. It's not great. So imagine these guys trying to, because you don't want to squeeze the baseball, because that's how you end up with forearm and elbow issues, and that's what happened at Glasnow. You want to be gently, kind of holding it like an egg in your hand. And then you want to throw triple digits or throw these crazy wipeout sliders or whatever that the guys are throwing these days. And it's slipping out of your hand. It's chalky. You've also got sweat slipping all over. I mean, it's impossible to do what these guys are doing without some kind of assistance. And again, Rich Hill, not a guy that was using Spider Tack, I can guarantee, but was probably using something. Garrett Richards might have been using Spider Tack. I don't know. But a guy that was definitely using stuff because of how different he's looked since then. And my point, get back to Richards, was that he said he had picked up a new pitch like 4 days before his start. He had never thrown in his life because the pitches that he was used to he couldn't do because he couldn't grip the ball. So had to completely find a new approach. And it looked like for a while with those kind of 83, 84 mile an hour pitches that looked like changeups, but they didn't come up as changeups. Maybe on whatever, StatCast, ESPN, whatever you're using, came up as kind of four seams or sinkers. But to me, if you're asking me, they're change-ups because of what I know about Hill and what we've seen this year. So did that, and again, as I said this earlier, didn't throw a single change-up until like early June against the Rangers. So went all of April, all of May without throwing a change-up, then goes to it, and then maybe throw it once or twice. This game, he threw it a bunch. And then typically we've seen the curveball at about 71, 72. That kind of has not quite a 12-6 break, but from top to bottom. Instead, we're seeing a pitch at about 65, 66 that kind of breaks east to west rather than north-south, and it was coming up as sliders. So to me, that's almost a different pitch. So a guy that went from fastball, curveball to basically changeup, slider. A guy that won the American League Pitcher of the month in May. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And a 41-year-old knows that darn well. So what I'm saying is connect the dots with everything I just said. I think maybe he's struggling a little bit with having to go, as Glasnow put it, cold turkey on the substances that are no longer allowed to continue to be used. They were always against the rules. The rules just were not ever enforced, and so it ran rampant. And now with everyone having to stop, I think that's maybe a byproduct, but like I said, the talk about the stolen signs may have taken some wind out of the sails of what my conspiracy theory, if you'll call it, and did kind of find his stuff late in the game. I mean, was throwing 87, 88, more fastball cutter types, and then did throw a couple of those curveballs at 71, 72, but again, that kind of 65, 66 mile an hour pitch that plays more like a slider. To me, that's him not having the good feel for his curveball. I'm not as much concerned with the fastball cutter. That seems like it's fine. But the changeups maybe he's more comfortable with now, although they crushed it, as did Schwarber to start the game. And the curveball, which is really what butters the bread, when he can get that called for strikes or even chase on it, that makes his 89 fastball play a lot higher than it is and a lot tougher to hit. And so my point is, if he's losing feel for that pitch, that's bad news, because that's that's the gas that makes the engine go, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And only time will tell, because he could have a completely different start his next time out. But the trend that I've seen his last 2 or 3 starts since the stuff has come down for Major League Baseball, that's just my piece on it. I wanted to kind of get that out there, and as always, as we always say, we're doing this every night. We'll certainly keep an eye on that trend and see how that continues. And that's really all I can say about his start tonight. Again, 82 pitches, 56 for strikes, so very, very efficient. Even with all the 8 hits allowed and a walk, 9 base runners, and only threw 82 over 6. Could have gone more, but he came up to bat in the 7th, so it didn't make it any sense to have him go further. And again, limiting expectations, or not limiting, but managing expectations. If you can get 5 or 6 from a 41-year-old starter, you should be happy with it. And that's what they did tonight and saved the bullpen from what could have been a mess. I like how Dave Will said, if we're talking about a 22-year-old Rich Hill, maybe he doesn't get out of that second inning, but a 41-year-old Hill who has done and seen it all, as I've said before, was able to weather the storm and get through 6. I think that was a big kind of understated thing, and even though he gets the loss again, I'm still pretty pleased with what Hill has done, especially considering I think he's having to, you want to talk about weathering a storm, again, with the lack of the sticky stuff. Even if he was just using sunscreen with the rosin, we're seeing a bit of a different pitcher, really, completely different pitches that we haven't really seen before. So I imagine it cannot be easy for what he's going through right now, and he's been one of the guys that have been the most outspoken against Major League Baseball's midseason crackdown of it, which, kind of, obviously innocent until proven guilty, but that off the bat just seems a little bit suspect that he would be coming, the great defense, against that. The other 2 relievers, again, a loss on the road. They only covered 2 innings, or rather 8 innings, so that was 2 innings out of the pen. Kittredge for 1 perfect inning, and then Springs for 1 perfect inning. They both had a strikeout. Kittredge, 12 pitches, 9 strikes. Springs, 14 pitches, 9 strikes. For both of them, a couple of warning track fly balls, really 2 for each. So a deep Nationals Park was able to hold it. So not, terrific, dazzling innings, but they keep it scoreless. They keep the game 4-2 going into the late stages where, Cash emptied the bench and ultimately did their job, and neither of those are A guys either. And good to see Kittredge. Giving up those deep fly balls is concerning, but he gave up 2 home runs in his last appearance. So, getting those numbers back down. And an ERA of 1.64 still, which is very impressive for him, certainly, you would say. And for Springs, a 3.15 earned run average. So, and for the Rays, they only threw 108 pitches, 74 for strikes, so the whole staff did a pretty good job in that regard. And with that, we will close the book on tonight's loss, and now we will turn our attention to tomorrow's game from Tompkin on Twitter. Drew Rasmussen will be the opener for the Rays on Wednesday, the first time he's done that in Tampa Bay. And I believe was a starter coming through the minors, has not done it in the big leagues. I want to say this is his first big league start unless the Brewers used him as an opener. With Waka slated to work the bulk of the innings. I understand that decision. I don't necessarily agree with it. I think for Waka, he is a starter. He's better that way. He's been very adamant saying he wants to do anything he can to help the team win. He's more than happy to come out of the pen, but it seems like it's just more natural for him as a starter. It's harder to teach old dogs new tricks. Like Charlie Morton saying he doesn't want to, go behind an opener. 41 Rich Hill, you're not going to put behind an opener. Some guys are just starting pitchers, that old generation of pitchers rather than throwers that we see more of today. But maybe that's a conversation for a later date. If he does well behind it tomorrow, then they will have proved me wrong. And Rasmussen, maybe not just for 1, but for 2, but we'll see. I really have no idea if they're going to go 1 or 2. There's no inclination either way. He's done both out of the pen. So we'll just have to wait and see on that. We'll start with Waka first. Let me just say this first. Tomorrow afternoon, 4:05 Eastern Time. I'm not quite sure why it's an afternoon game. The Rays have an off day on Thursday before heading to Buffalo, New York to play the Blue Jays. And I think the Nats are staying home. But anyways, it'll be Michael Waka behind Drew Rasmussen against John Lester, who the Rays have already seen this year. But starting with Waka, he's not starting, but he'll get the bulk innings. 29-year-old right-hander is 1-2 on the year with a 4.66 earned run average. His last time out against the Red Sox looked very, very good. 5 innings scoreless, just 1 hit allowed, 2 walks, 7 strikeouts, which was the most he has had since April 16th, and his second highest strikeout mark of the season on only 75 pitches after that horrible 11-hit allowed start against the Mariners that he had the time prior. And that's another reason I'd rather have him as a starter, continue to get him stretched out to maybe 100 or so pitches. Maybe he's not a guy that they want to see a third time through the order as much, so maybe he's not. But with Glasnow going down, I think guys like McClanahan and Waka just fully stretch him out because you don't have that ace you can lean on every fifth day, and you want to save the bullpen as much as you can going into the second half. But this could be also a matchups thing as well. But if they trust him to start against Boston, maybe why not against the Nats? But on the other hand, if it's a more traditional open, then you're talking about when they invented it in 2018. It was just to avoid the big boys at the top of the order. The study had shown that the most runs are scored in a major league game in the first inning, and it's because of all the team's best hitters hit there. So in the very first game of the opener, it was Romo striking out the side against, what was it? I want to say Trout and maybe even Ohtani and maybe Pujols. I mean, just the top three guys of the order. And I think it was a soft landing for Yarbrough so that he didn't have to face those guys to start the game. So Kyle Schwarber, who's got, 16 home runs in the month of June, and the only the home run a day pace that he's been on for the last 2 or 3 weeks. Only Barry Bonds and Sammy Sosa has been able to do what he's done. I want to say the 16 home runs in 18 days, whatever it was, something insane like that. Only Sosa and Bonds have done that. So I understand you don't want Waka to face him to start the game, especially with Schwarber homering off of the first pitch from Hill tonight. So that I understand, and then also get him through maybe Turner and Soto. And have you feel much better about Rasmussen, I think, facing those guys. And so that will be, I think, the logic probably behind the move. And so with Rasmussen maybe going 1, Waka probably goes 4 or 5. And let's say he goes maybe 4. So that would get you through 5 innings. Everyone out of the pen is available. Fairbanks, Castillo, Feyereisen, the 3A guys, but also Thompson could go as needed. And I think they're eager to get him a good appearance. After a couple of certainly outings where he struggled, but Kittredge and Springs could also go on a back-to-back. So, like I said, everyone is pretty much available. And also with the off day Thursday, they can kind of empty the tank a little bit if they want to. They can be as aggressive, really, as they want to be. And then on the national side, the starter will be the 37-year-old left-hander, John Lester. He is 1-3 on the season with a .499 earned run average. His last time out, probably his worst start of the year against the Marlins in Miami. Goes just 2 1/3, gives up 7 runs on 5 hits, 3 walks, just 1 strikeout, 64 total pitches thrown, and did not look good at all. Has faced the Rays this season on June 8th at the Trop, 3 2/3, a run on 4 hits, 4 walks, and 2 strikeouts. Looking back to that game, again on June the 8th, I was there in person. Manuel Margot led the game off with a home run, and after that, they were able to get plenty of base runners against him, and like the 1 run allowed over 3 2/3 suggests, he was working in and out of jams. He walked 2 straight in the second, and then the Rays get no runs. Then they had first and third with 2 outs, no runs. And then in the fourth, they had the bases loaded, 2 outs, no runs. So was working in and out of trouble, and the Rays have struggled to deliver the knockout punch to a starter that's not having a good outing. That would be one of the biggest gripes that I have of the team this year, along with their struggles with runners in scoring position. So they'll get another chance, obviously, to do so. You'd think at home maybe he has a bit of a better start, but he is coming off of a really, really rough outing. The time before that against the Mets, 6 innings at 2 runs, and then 5 1/3 of 2 runs against the Pirates the time before that. And only 3 starts between the 2 Rays starts, because it was just a couple weeks ago that the Nationals were in town at the Trop against the Rays. And then just the scouting report in case you needed a refresher. He's got a fastball at this point at high 80s. Also has got kind of a sinker cutter off of that. mid to high 80s as well. Has got a curveball at low 70s, a changeup at low 80s, and I believe that's it for him. So, mainly just fastball, changeup, but can throw some other kind of stuff in there from time to time as well. And does work his fair share, or issue rather, his fair share of walks. In 23 innings this month, he's walked 10 and striking out only 14. On the season, 20 walks, only 36 strikeouts, which is a really bad ratio. And a guy that's, I guess, been struggling with control. And he's another veteran, 37 years old. So, as a left-hander, the Rays playing a little bit different of a lineup without the DH. Randy, I imagine, will be back in the lineup in left. Probably Kiermaier in center, Margot in right. And then in the infield, maybe they go Brasso at third, maybe Franco at shortstop. I would like to see Wendell at second base, but they'll probably go Lau at second, even with his struggles against lefties. And then they would go Yandy Diaz at first. So you would have, Meadows. So they would have Meadows, Choi, and Wendell on the bench to come off, and also probably Francisco Mejia. I would imagine they maybe start sending even day game after night game because of the off days. They could probably do it if they wanted to, especially with kind of the bullpen day that they're going to want to. But maybe it is Mejia, and then they'll have Zunino available off the bench as well without the DH. And so with the opener, they'll be able to kind of work around that pitcher spot much more probably than they did tonight, I would say. But expect them probably to empty the bench once again. So 4 o'clock start. That game probably wraps at 7. We're not going to be able to be on the air probably right after the game. So call it. I'm going to try my best to maybe do it at 9 to get a little bit of an earlier start, and so an earlier end to the show as well. And the off day on Thursday, so we'll be off. And then, of course, the weekend set against the Blue Jays that I'll be able to cover as well. So 9 o'clock, we'll call it tomorrow. I'll try my best to meet that mark as we close the show here. Definitely make sure you're following us on WHBC Official, not just to get the link to the show when it goes live, but also get updates, programming notes on, if we're changing the times of the show, whatever. You can also subscribe to the show. We're listening to it right now on Spreaker.com. You just make an account on there, subscribe to the show, and you'll get us on there whenever we're live as well. Thanks for everyone for tuning into the program. Look forward to taking some calls this week as well. An interesting series here against the Nats. It's bound to be a good one. Hopefully they avoid the 2-game sweep, all that stuff. Afternoon game tomorrow. We'll see you at 9 o'clock tonight. As always, we'll talk to you then.
Sports Radio 101.9 FM and Sports Radio 66. The Fan.
HBC